Tanja Groen. Tanja Groen was born on June 23, 1975. She was described as a loving girl with a lot of friends. In 1993, she was about to start her studies in the health sciences at the University of Maastricht. On August 31, 1993, Tanja had an initiation body at Circumflex, a Dutch sorority in Maastricht. At around midnight, she left the body to go to her rented room in Gronsveld. A few of the students saw her cycling off to her Bernese trot. She never arrived at her room, and she and her bike were never seen again. A few hours before she was to attend the party at 8 p.m., she had called her mother from a landline at the post office in Vreythorf. She told her mother that she was not coming home on Thursday, as she was busy with sorority. She said that she would instead come home on Friday at 2 p.m. On Friday, her mother Corrie waited at the train station in Schiegen, but she never showed up. A few hours later, Cody received a phone call from a fellow student asking her if Tanja was in Schiegen. The student told her that Tanja hadn't attended the university classes for the last 2 days. Tanja's parents then called the landlords in Gronsveld, but they hadn't seen her either. Parents, now concerned, reported her missing to the police. The parents went to her apartment in Gronsville and core researched through Tanja's belongings. She noticed that her rings and a pair of earrings were missing, which means she never reached her room after the party. The police started a large-scale investigation into her disappearance. Her room was extensively searched. Routes that she used to take were searched, and people were questioned. Her friends' families and the students at the university were questioned, but nothing would turn up. The case would eventually grow cold. Over the years, hundreds of tapes have been received by the police, and mass rapes, one of which was on October 24, 2009, when a psychologist, Pete Nandel, said that Tanja may have been buried in northern France. However, police did not find it credible enough to investigate. A few years later, a man claimed Tanja was living in Belgium and had 2 children. He took a picture of the woman and showed it to the police. Corrie saw the picture and immediately denied that it was her daughter. In 2001, 2 divers found a bicycle in the river Demise in Maastricht, which was believed to belong to Tanja, but it was Lady determined that the bicycle was not that of Tanja. The bicycle was from a different company and had a different frame number as well as zip code. In 2014, a walker found human bones in a field in Gronsveld and contacted the police. The Dutch Forensic Institute was able to draw a DNA profile from the remains. The remains were that of an old man and not of Tanja. Since then, the case has grown cold, and there have been no new leads in the case. Tanja remains missing for more than 25 years. Garnell Moore. Garnell Moore was born on May 18, 1995, to a career criminal mother who spent most of her life behind bars. His father was a petty criminal and was a vagrant. Garnell would spend his early life living with his paternal grandparents in Baltimore, Maryland. When Garnell turned 6, his paternal aunt, Belinda Cash, took him into her home in nearby Baltimore neighborhood. Belinda never legally adopted Garnell or even attempted to make an effort to officially become the caretaker of Garnell. He was never enrolled in any school and never came in contact with any social service agencies. One of his great aunts, Trina Martin, who was 9 months pregnant at the time, was raising Garnell's half-sister, and Garnell frequently visited them at their home. In August of 2002, Trina saw Garnell playing outside Belinda's home. This would be the last confirmed sighting of Garnell. Trina made arrangements with Belinda for Garnell to visit her the following weekend. But on the weekend, Trina went into labor and had to reschedule it. About a week later, Trina tried to reschedule to the following week. Belinda, however, told her that it was an inconvenient time because she was in the process of moving to a new house. Garnell hasn't been seen since. When Trina called her again a few days later, the number was disconnected, and the address Belinda had supposedly moved to turned out to be fictitious. Garnell was never seen by anyone again after that. 3 years would go by, and no one had heard of Belinda or Garnell, who would have been 10 years old and in grade 5. Until in 2005, Garnell's relatives finally got a chance to confront Belinda. Belinda was questioned about Garnell, and she told them that he was away on a school field trip to Virginia. However, schools were not in session at the time. Trina called schools throughout the area to check if Garnell was enrolled in any of the schools, but the employees told her that the privacy laws did not allow them to disclose the information. Worried, Trina then contacted the police. Police found out that Garnell was never enrolled in any of the schools. When police finally questioned Belinda, she told them that she could no longer care for Garnell, so she left him on the steps of Social Services building in the 500 block off North Hilton Street, near Edmondson Avenue in West Baltimore. Police then spoke to the employees at the Social Services office and found out that no one had any idea who Garnell was, and no one recalled seeing the boy sitting on the steps of the building. Police searched Belinda's current address and found no sign that Garnell had ever lived there. Police were able to get in touch with Garnell's father. He told police that he had last seen Garnell with Belinda in either 2002 or 2003. Police also questioned Belinda's neighbors, where she had lived for a few years. The neighbors told police that they had seen Garnell with Belinda and that she called him her son. However, they hadn't seen the boy since 2001. Belinda agreed to take a polygraph test and showed no sign of deception, except for one question. She has been questioned by the police multiple times, but she maintains that she had left Garnell at the steps of Social Services building. Belinda had no prior criminal record or history of child abuse, and they could not find any concrete evidence that she had harmed Garnell. Police published age progression photos to show a teenage Garnell, and more recently an adult Garnell. The details around Garnell's disappearance still remain unclear to this day. Police do not necessarily believe that Garnell had been harmed and believe that someone could have taken him in and cared for him, but they are concerned about his safety and want to verify his well-being. Walter Dunson. Walter Dunson was a World War I veteran who worked at the now-defunct Hellmandrader Iron Foundry on Calderane Avenue in Cincinnati. He would retire from the job in 1970. He was never legally married, but was believed to have 8 to 9 children. In June 1998, the Social Security Administration sent a letter to Walter requesting that he meet with a representative to verify that he was still alive and getting his checks 4 days later. On June 5, 1998, one of Walter's sons, Gary Adams, reported Walter missing. Walter had supposedly lived with his son, Gary, in a rented house for the past 18 years. Gary said that on June 5th, he and his father were shopping together at Finley Market on Elda Street in the Over-the-Rhine neighborhood of Cincinnati. Sometime during the shopping, Gary stepped into a butcher shop for a moment, and when he came back out, Walter was nowhere to be seen. Walter was carrying a black leather wallet with about $15 in it. When he disappeared, some witnesses came forward and said that they had seen an elderly man that day, but he was about 25 years younger than Walter. Upon investigation, police became suspicious of Gary's story. They questioned Gary's neighbors and his landlord. They said that they hadn't seen an elderly man living with Gary in their 18 years there moreover. While the supposed bedroom was searched, and it didn't appear to have been lived recently. Walter had a history of medical problems, but there was no prescription medication anywhere in the house when police asked for a picture. Gary told them no one had taken a picture of his father in about 20 years. The most recent photo of him that authorities were able to find was from 1973. The last known sighting of Walter was in 1980 when he was hospitalized for the treatment of dementia and possibly a mild stroke. Ever since then, there is no paper trail of Walter at all and no confirmed sightings of him from anyone. Except his son, he has not seen a doctor, made any insurance claim, had any prescriptions failed, held a bank account, voted or owned a library card since about 1980. His driver's license expired in 1970s, but hasn't been renewed since. Walter used to frequent an elder cafe, but no one had seen him since 1980. He also stayed at the Drop-In Center, a local homeless shelter, in 1979 and 1980, but no one has seen him since 1980 either. Wilder once also belonged to the Cavalry Baptist Church in Walnut Hills neighborhood of Cincinnati, but none of the members had seen him after 1980, except for the pastor, who believes he saw him in 1985 or 1986. Besides the pastor's statement, there is no proof of Walter's existence after 1980. When police interrogated Gary, he stated that Walter did not believe in doctors or banks, which is why paper trails stop after 1980. He said that Walter was a quiet man and mostly kept to himself, in part because he was afraid the family would get in trouble with their landlord for having too many tenants. Although the landlord said there was no limit on how many people can live in the home, it was also found that Walter had been drawing his pension since 1970. Authorities believe that for years, Gary had been co-signing over $100,000 worth of Walter's checks and depositing them into his own account. It is theorized that Walter probably died sometime during the 1980s, and that Gary covered up his death so he could keep collecting Walter's benefits. In 1999, Gary was convicted on 25 counts of thefts of public funds and for stealing Walter's Social Security benefits. Investigators tried to match Walter's handwriting to the signatures on the checks, but couldn't find sample of Walter's handwriting. So Gary was acquitted on 25 counts of forgery. Gary was sentenced to 27 months in prison in order to pay restitution. He was never charged for his father's disappearance, while there is presumed dead, and his case still remains unsolved.